Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering human creativity. I am Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Malik Robinson, who serves as Executive Director of the Cleo Parker Robinson Dance and also as Chair of the Board of Directors for DanceUSA. Malik, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. It's a pleasure to be here.
So it is so great to be able to talk with you. Obviously, you know, you're at the leadership of dance, not only nationally, but really internationally. And I want to talk about a lot of where you see dance going as a discipline, where it's at. But before that, if you can kind of share for our audience, Cleo Parker Robinson Dance, can you just share a little background on the company?
Yeah, sure. You know, our company is celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. So we are coming on the tail end of our 50th anniversary season. So that puts us right in 1970 is when we began, and we emerged out of the civil rights movement. We emerged out of the Black arts movement, and we're really intent on creating a dance company, a dance academy that was as welcoming as it could be and rooted in our African heritage. And so to this day, you know, the works that we produce are inspired by the Black experience and reflect our connections in the world and throughout the world with the many different cultures and people that that make up Denver, where we are, and where we tour. So you also see that reflected in the company.
Right, which is just so awesome. And one of the things that has really always, you know, that I've been inspired by in dance is that it seems that going back to, you know, 1970, so for 50 years and more, there have been companies, there have been entrepreneurs building dance and incorporating diversity in all of our voices that make up who we are as a society. And in some ways, I see more in dance than in some other disciplines, obviously more than, say, orchestras. We don't have that similar, thing that has existed so long in orchestras or others. Do you have a sense of either why that may be the case, or why dance has in some ways been a leader in that?
You know, that's a good question. And I think about that with DanceUSA, because we say dance, but within that umbrella, we're talking about a very broad range of dance genres and types, right? So it's not Ballet USA, right? It's not contemporary dance. And so it covers really a wide span of forms. And I think because, particularly with DanceUSA, because it's expansive, you're going to get a really rich range of voices and expressions that you find within our membership. And so I think that that's probably the reason why it's distinctive in that way. I will also say that our form with contemporary dance and within the Black dance tradition, it also pulls from not just the African-American experience, but I think it also pulls from traditions from around the world. And so it stays open to where you're going to get inspired from. I like to say that the cross-cultural connection is really the mother of innovation. And so we find ourselves, you know, really connecting with who we find inspiration from. Or, you know, if we see a move that we like, and so there's an even further investigation into it. And so there's this openness of certainly honoring your own tradition and forms that you are celebrating and preserving, but there's also a hunger and an interest in what others are doing and what that conversation is, right? And so I think there's that idea of how are we innovating, and how we innovate is how we connect with others and get inspired by others.
Yeah, and so from this vantage point of Dance USA and serving as board chair, I'm curious, kind of that perspective, right? So the service organization for all dance in the country, as you mentioned, right? All these different disciplines and styles and forms of dance, and just kind of what has been your sense over, say, the past year, right? I've seen in so many areas of the arts that diversity was finally not just even being talked about, but I actually have seen more movement than probably in my entire life. And so I'm optimistic. While I feel the jury's not out, I'm optimistic that there's more change happening than has. From your vantage point, being able to kind of have a sense of dance across the nation and all these styles, do you see that happening? Have you been seeing that happening? Are you optimistic? How do you feel about the incorporation of diversity across the field?
Well, I have to provide some context and just some history into I think why I'm in the position I'm in, and and the connection with our organization. So Cleo Parker Robinson was a part of the original task force to form Dance USA 30 plus years ago. And so she was a part of this task force. And I think on the task force, it was a range of voices, a diversity of voices, right? And what ended up happening was once Dance USA was formed, it became very exclusive. And so it became big ballet companies that were largely the dominant voice. And it became clear that there wasn't a voice for Black and brown voices. And so you're familiar with the International Association of Blacks in Dance. And so that organization formed partly in response to not having a voice within Dance USA. So I think it's extraordinary to think that here we are now, many years later, and have come together again to work through this well, I was going to say an imperfect union, but working towards a more perfect union, right? And so I think that that is the challenge of America. So we see that taking place on this kind of microscopic level within dance. And so Dance USA has been on this journey before I got there, and really started to think and look internally and have that internal assessment as to, you know, we've caused harm in the past. How can we move forward in a better way? And so I think from the relationships and the conversations that we've been having and developing and cultivating over the years, that now Dance USA and the International Association of Blacks in Dance are partners. And so I think it's just an extraordinary story. And I think there's a lot more that goes into it. But I think it's recognizing that one, the dance has some true power in terms of, in arts in general, but just in true power in terms of how we transform society and how dancers and artists are leaders of that work. And I think because Dance USA has been on this journey, and now we find ourselves in this moment where it's really pronounced, right, where we see these inequities, I do feel optimistic about how we're moving because the movement has started beforehand. And I see that folks are really, I think about our board of trustees, I think about our tremendous staff at Dance USA. I mean, folks have really been doing the deep work to put forward our best foot to make sure that we're representing dance in all of its forms.
Well, and it's, and of course we have lots of people, not only arts administrators at various organizations, but also leaders of the other service organizations as well across the field, tuning into the show. And I think that's really such a great, example, and where potentially other service organizations can look at and say, sometimes there might be these cycles where we're able to, begin something even decades ago, but then where things might falter or go in different directions. But now can we kind of look and see what is this next chapter? And I also love what you said about the partnerships too. And how because I think that collaborative type of approach, being inclusive of the field and all the membership, but then collaborative with other organizations, often just brings about results and impact greater than any one institution or one organization can. So definitely, well, thank you. And thank you so much for all of your work that you've been doing at the leadership level of that. So I wanted to kind of switch gears to a little bit and just talk about, we are hopefully coming out of the pandemic now, right? At least here in the States. And of course, dance, hit as much as any other areas of the arts, potentially even more so because of the physicality of it. And just wondering, where do you think things will be for the fall, for CPRD, and for dance as a whole? And are there any things that you would want to share with our audience, things that you're thinking about or working in terms of preparation to have your art form and your work be as impactful as possible come fall?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, because we're still in many regards in a raging pandemic, and steadily, more and more of us are getting vaccinated, and that's creating more opportunity, right, for us to come back in the rehearsal studios, on stage, for audiences to come in. And so for CPRD, we have been hosting classes in person. Typically for us, we host about 60 classes, and this is pre-COVID, about 60 classes a week. We're up to about 25, and so we're building on bringing more of those back online, because we did go to a fully online format, a fully virtual format, and that has had some benefits. I think we've been able to reach some larger audiences in some regard, but I think for dancers, because of the physicality of it, because of that interconnection that we experience, that we really feed off of, that it's so much better when we're in person. And because of that, we're really looking to have our 51st fall performance season in September in person. So that's how we're preparing. And I know that there's going to be, some guidelines that we're continue to observe and uphold. But we had our first in-person performance, and we live streamed it, so we had about 90 people in our audience, and then about another 90 or so online, and that went well. So we're thinking about how we might incorporate live streaming in ways that we probably wouldn't have for the next 5 or 10 years. I don't know, so, but we are planning on being in person. We've been paying attention to all of the surveys where the patrons are saying, if you're vaccinated, there's 80 to 90% are saying that they're willing to be in person, and they're fine with that. And so getting some really good indication in that way. And so we're just hopeful that the trend is that, those pandemic infection numbers keep going down, and we're able to come back in person, because that live element is, you just can't beat it.
It is, and it's so important to so many aspects of our art forms. So unfortunately, we're just about out of time, but I always like to ask, during this past year, there's obviously been some tough times. When you think about, instituting some, DE&I work, things like that, sometimes there can be challenges. What do you draw on personally in terms of your own leadership for inspiration, for strength during those toughest of times?
Yeah. Like so many of us, and this is no joke. I mean, for me, I have to rely on music and dance and movement to shift my energy. It's amazing how a piece of music can help to shift that for you. And that's what I've had to rely on, because a lot of the work has been in this room, for the past 12 months or more. And there's not much else to find some inspiration out of. But I think that, being able to pull out some of a range of music. I have to share with you that that I'm also a board member for the Colorado Symphony, and so a lot of what we're talking about, I think, is applicable there, because the Colorado Symphony has been just extraordinary in how they've also shown up for community, and just the range of music that that they've been playing. And so I think that that's what we see, and that's what it's been for me. And so once I get that recharged, and I'm able to come back and show up in a good way.
Awesome. Well, Malik Robinson, you truly are one of the great arts engines powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate you.